What's up, guys? Lvladen here, and today I'm coming at you with a video on the 10.0.7 PTR. I'm going to be taking a look at the recent changes to Red Paladin this past week. So, let's get right into it. Now, with the new talent system here, we received changes mostly on the retribution side. Some of the important changes are on both the capstone on the left side and the capstones on the right side. Now, some of these are still not yet implemented. They did talk about giving Searing Light a secondary effect. That is not there yet. However, I will go over the new changes and new builds. So, the first thing that I'll get into is my current personal favorite build. But this does kind of change. So this involves one of the new talents called Templar Strikes. And now what Templar Strikes does is it lets us pre-plan our burst. And what I mean by that is we can stack our Blessing of Dawn twice now. So Blessing of Dawn is... It used to be a very, very, kind of passive maintenance buff that we didn't have to think too much about. But now, with the influx of insane amount of holy power and this new talent, Vanguard of Justice, we are able to set up absolutely nutty burst. And let me show you the build right here. So we're going to go ahead and go Justicar Vengeance. So Justicar Vengeance got an 8-yard range. So it has a longer range than it does on live, and it deals Holy Strike damage. Physical Presence here got reworked, so it does slightly less damage than before, but as a secondary effect, we're at 50 stacks. Our next Holy Power Spender deals about... It's usually, in my experience, it's about 80k damage. It's a little different than the tooltip, and it has no animation, so it's kind of hard to tell when this goes off. I'm sure maybe it will get an animation at some point, but the passive portion of this ability is pretty cool. It reminds me of Aura of Reckoning to a degree. However, like the original Aura of Reckoning, not the 100 stacks Aura of Reckoning. And now our Blades of Light also functions off of our single target Holy Power abilities. So if we wanted to rock Final Verdict here, it would also benefit from Physical Presence. So that's really cool. However, they did nerf... let's see, Holy Crusader right here. It is no longer Holy Strike damage. It is just Holy damage. So Blade of Justice is doing slightly less damage, and Expurgation is also doing slightly less damage than the previous week's build because they no longer benefit from Physical Presence. But I'd say overall we do more damage. So the idea behind this build is to stack up as much damage as we can through Vanguard of Justice while maintaining Physical Presence. So Vanguards of Justice got buffed. I didn't go over it too much last week because I didn't think too much about it. But now our Holy Power finishers can cost up to 5 Holy Power with 2 points and deal 66% increased damage. Now this talent got buffed this week. I'm not sure why, because I thought it was too strong last week, but this week it got buffed. And now we're doing absolutely insane one-shot damage. So our overall, we can play this 2 different ways. We can play this with an overall consistent damage style build or the pre-planned Blessing of Dawn build. And I'm going to go over this ability right here, Templar Strikes. So we're going to switch into this talent. So what this does is it gives our Crusader Strike essentially 3 charges to cycle through. Basically, it's always going to be off cooldown for the most part. So we press Crusader Strike once, press it twice, press it a 3rd time, then it's coming off cooldown right there. And what that does is it procs 1 Blessing of Dawn. Then Crusader Strike's off cooldown. We can press it 3 times again. 1, 2, 3. And guys, we no longer have to pay attention to Holy Power. I want you guys to not think about Holy Power at all when running this build. Don't worry about it. The things that you're going to be worrying about is maintaining a Blessing of Dawn at 2 stacks before you press a Holy Power spender with 5 Holy Power, while also keeping an Expurgation on the target, while also before your Holy Power spender, even if you're at 5 stacks, send a Judgment. Because we want these abilities to all be syncing up before we send our burst. So just for an example, I'm going to hit this target. We're going to get all our stacks up, double stacks, have a Judgment on the target here, have an Expurgation. I'm going to go ahead and Wings, Final Reckoning, stun the target into a Justicar Vengeance. That was about 300k non-crit. We're going to get a secondary proc of our Blessing of Dawn. Double charge again. And I didn't see which one that one was here. So we had a normal 298k and a normal 130k. And I believe I did it a little bit too slow, so we let the Final Reckoning fall off on the second Justicar Vengeance. But with this build, we are throwing out all we know, at least in PvP. I'm not sure about PvE. PvE, we still might just, at 5 Holy Power, press the Holy Power Spender anyway. But in PvP, when you're setting up your damage purely for burst kill windows, you're going to think about it like a sub-rogue. You want all these buffs on your target before you press a Justicar Vengeance. You want to make sure you always have that double stack. And it's so easy to maintain with this talent right here, Templar Strikes. Now, it's also easy to maintain with Crusading Strikes, because every attack from Crusading Strikes also is one charge, or it counts as one charge towards a Blessing of Dawn proc. However, it's just so easy to maintain it with Crusader Strikes and double charge of Blade of Justice and Judgment. It's really up to you how you want to do it. There's just a little bit more control with Crusading Strikes. Now there's a different build that you can run with Crusading Strikes if you don't like Vanguards of Justice. And, I do not believe that this is going to stay in the game. This is so toxic. The hardest hitting ability I crit with Justicar Vengeance with all procs up was about 786k. And then without a stun target, it was about 559k, I believe. So with a stun target, it probably can hit even higher if I get a little bit luckier on the RNG. But guys, we're hitting for almost 1 million with this talent, between this talent and Final Reckoning and the double charge of Blessing of Dawn. So they wanted to get rid of stacking modifiers. This is not the way to do it. We have even more stacking modifiers right now than we did in current retail Shadow, not Shadowlands, oh my god, Dragonflight. So don't expect this to stay in the game. And if it is, expect it to get nerfed. And if it gets nerfed, then don't expect to play it, because without Vanguard of Justice, our damage is just fine. Let me show you my personal favorite build at the moment. I know I say that about every build, but more or less, it goes something like this. I'm going to take 2 talent points out of here. We're going to go harder with the Crusader. I'm going to swap over to Crusading Strikes, take some points in here, take a point in here, 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 and here. And where else did I go missing? Let me see. Is that about it? You can change Divine Wrath to Empyrean Legacy. That is fine. 3 extra seconds on Avenging Wrath is not a game changer, and Empyrean Legacy adds to the single target ability that we have. So I'm actually just going to go ahead and showcase what that looks like right here and get rid of this. We're going to apply it into this build. This is probably the dueling build, I'd say. And even with Divine Wrath, I'm not entirely certain we need Vanguard's Momentum, because we have so many Holy Power generating abilities. Even while running Vengeful Wrath, I'm just not entirely sold on if we need a second charge or not, because I am already kind of GCD capped on my Holy Power generators and spenders, and everything's doing so much damage. It's tough to come up with a solid rotation. Now, what this build would look like here is we're going to be relying on our auto attacks to generate most of our damage here. So let me get rid of this. Now Crusading Strikes is Crusader Strike is our auto attacks. We're gonna get in here, get our 5 Holy Power, summon the target, Wings, Final Reckoning, JV, Wake of Ashes, JV, Divine Toll, JV, Blade of Justice. Then only after all that are we starting to hit Hammer of Wrath, which is why I'm not entirely sold on Vengeful Wrath as a burst talent. But it is really nice to have that extra range damage when we are getting kited, when we can't quite hit a JV on our target. So it's going to be situational during the burst rotation when you're going to factor in a Hammer of Wrath. But when you're getting kited, it's amazing. Or when you're looking for a quick little double crit and you don't quite have the Holy Power, I still think it's worth taking Vengeful Wrath. Not entirely sure about Vanguard's Momentum. But the damage we're putting out is just, it's silly still. As you can see, it's not as silly as Vanguard, what is here? Vanguard of Justice. Now this is silly. So our max crit here with Justicar's Vengeance in a stun target with our full Wings Final Reckoning setup is still less than our highest non-crit with the other build. So there is one build that is obviously 10 times stronger than the other when it comes to burst. But when it comes to consistent damage, this build is definitely probably the dueling build, the consistent damage build, the overall more damage build. But if you're trying to be a sub rogue and do some big one shots, it's probably going to be Vanguard of Justice. Honestly, it's going to be Vanguard of Justice no matter what until it gets nerfed. I kind of hope it does get nerfed because I'm not a huge fan of the whole 5 holy power playstyle. But we really don't notice it as much because we have so much holy power, whether it's through Templar strikes or Crusading strikes. Now, let me just show you guys what the final verdict looks like here. So final verdict still doing quite a bit of damage. You know, looking like it's range. It does a little bit more than the previous week because now it's counting the holy strike damage. So it's getting a 10% damage boost from physical presence here. However, it is not. I'm not entirely sold on if it's going to be better now because JV has that 8-yard range. But JV there is no longer a range increase on Crusader Aura here. So the only range increase we're getting now is on our Crusader strikes through Crusader's Reprieve. It is no longer factored in on the Crusader Aura or Seal of the Templar at all. It's just gone, which I'm fine with. We already got a range increase on JV. And we really didn't need it on anything else at that point. Let's see. Anything else to go over here? So Divine Retribution is substantially weaker than it was before. It was giving, I believe, 2 seconds off of Blade of Justice. Or maybe that was a non-factored secondary effect. And it was just haste. Last week it was haste plus not yet implemented. And then the week before it was haste plus CDR on Blade of Justice, I believe. But now it's Divine Storm deals 10% increased crit strike damage. That's a nice secondary passive. That's cool. But mainly we take this talent in order to get down here to Holy Crusader. I do still think this is worth picking up because Blade of Justice is such a core part of our rotation. And it makes it scale off of our mastery. Because without that, these two things don't scale off of our mastery. Expurgation is just fire damage, and then Penitence is just the dot effect. So we're really massively increasing the damage of Holy Crusader here with Expurgation and Penitence. However, I do believe they are nerfing Ret Mastery. So, if our Mastery gets nerfed enough, it might not really matter. And now Burning Crusade no longer is not... It's not a Holy plus Fire damage. It's not that Radiant damage anymore. On Blade of Justice, it is an AoE Radiant damage for Divine Storm, Divine Hammer, and Consecration. And for those of you wondering about Divine Hammer here, if we take Divine Hammer, it does work with Consecrated Ground now. However, it is a reduced slow effect. It's only 25% move speed. So it's we don't need that because we already have a Judge Slow right here for 30% move speed. So yeah, I don't think it's going to be really worth picking up. And it's about 16k damage over 12 seconds, which is very minimal. Not that strong. Yeah, there are several very strong builds for the rework here, and take tuning into account. I still think they're fun, and even if Vanguard of Justice gets nerfed, which I think it will, there's no chance it goes through. Right? We can't be hitting 700k JVs. That's insane. I believe this talent is probably just going to get dropped and reworked rather than stick around. It's kind of like the Enhanced Shaman Overflowing Maelstrom. It's either going to be severely nerfed in PvP and no longer used, or it's just going to be, too OP. So keep that in mind. Another thing I missed up here is Rush of Light, new talent, new passive talent. Crit strikes of your damaging single target holy power abilities grant you 5% haste for 10 seconds. That's cool. That's because we had a lot of haste generating passives before, and most of them are gone. We do still have Divine Retribution down here, but, not a huge deal. Probably still not going to take it, to be honest. Judge, Jury, and Executioner, another semi-weak talent right here, increasing the crit chance of judgment by 10%. I don't think that's that big of a deal. Looking around, they unnerfed Commanding Judgment a little bit. It now deals reduced damage to only the secondary target. So before with Commanding Judgment, when it cleaved, it also dealt reduced damage to single target. So now you can still safely take this talent without worrying about a drop to your single target damage. And I believe the same application happened to Blessed Champion here. So if you're a PvEer, or if we're going to run a cleave build in 3s or RBG, something like that, these talents are now viable again. But yeah, that is about it for me today, guys. Honestly, I probably missed a few things. Oh yeah. One thing that is interesting. So Unbound Freedom, it is now over in the left side here, but now it has an additional effect here. It also, so it no longer provides Dispel Protection, but if your freedom is purged, it'll knock 6 seconds off the cooldown. So that's pretty cool. A little bit of Dispel Protection. I think this is a fair trade-off because a lot of our damage is ranged now, and we have essentially a permanent slow and 10% move speed increase. So we're gonna go back to the days of freedom out of roots, and then canceling freedom on ourselves against mages, which is, I think it's fine. Believe it or not, I feel like in the current meta, even on retail, Ret does pretty okay into mages. It's more rogues that are the problem. So I think this is fine. I think this is fine here. And then, alternatively, if this really ends up sucking, we can just go Selfless Healer. So that's cool. Were there any other changes over here made? I know I saw something, but there's really not that much of importance that was left over here. I believe, oh yeah, Lightforged Blessing got nerfed, and now Punishment is finally working on the PTR. So it hadn't been working until this past build, or maybe unreliably working. But Lightforged Blessing got a nerf. Yeah, that's about it, guys. Overall, positive changes. A lot of talents got their bugs fixed. Now it's going to be up to tuning, and we're still waiting on the mobility news, which they announced the other week, which was, that they're still working on the red mobility. So let me know in the comments what you guys think, and I will see you all next video. Peace.